The British Labour government is in a complete freefall. Last week's local elections across the UK, they weren't just a bad night for Kier Starmer. They were a political earthquake that shook the entire British establishment to its very foundations. And what if I told you that since that earthquake hit, Starmer's own cabinet has started resigning one by one, then in waves, forcing Starmer to literally lock himself inside number 10 Downing Street, refusing to come out, refusing to speak to his own ministers. All the while, over 90 of his own members of parliament are lining up to throw him out. This is not normal politics, gang. This is a political death spiral, and it's happening right now, live in real time. And today we're going to break down exactly how we got here, what the latest high-ranking resignations mean, and why Kier Starmer's days as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom are indeed inevitably coming to an end. Hey gang, it's me, Dr. Steve, your patron professor, enjoying yet another glorious day in the Trumpian golden age that you made possible back in November 2024. So if you want a front row seat on how you continue to change the world in ways you never even imagined, make sure to smack that bell and subscribe button. What's happening in Britain right now is not just a story about one failing prime minister. It's a story about what happens when a government completely loses the consent of the governed, when voters send a message so loud and so clear that even the party itself can no longer pretend not to hear it. Last week, on May 7th, British voters went to the polls for local council elections across the UK. Their local council elections function many ways like our midterms. It's often a referendum on the party in power. And what happened there was not a protest vote. It wasn't a warning shot. It was a full-scale political revolution at the ballot box. Reform UK, Nigel Farage's brand new so-called far-right, radical right party, won over 1,400 council seats across England. They took control of 8 full councils outright. Sky News projected that if there were a general election held today, Reform UK would be on course to become the largest party in the entire country. For the center-left Labour Party, it was a different story. It was a full-up bloodbath. They lost over 80% of their seats, over 1,300. 35 councils that Labour controlled were gone literally overnight. They lost ground in London. They lost ground in their heartlands, in the Midlands, in the North. In Tamworth, Reform swept every contested seat as Labour lost control of the council entirely. Now, the key here is that these are traditionally Labour voters. These are the working class communities in the North and the Midlands that Labour has represented now for over 100 years. And they didn't just stay home. They didn't just vote for someone else. They literally walked across the street and voted for the party that the establishment media calls far right and dangerous. Again, it's very similar to what we saw here in the States back in 2016, when nearly 200 counties in Wisconsin, and Iowa, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Ohio, deep blue working class counties that have voted Democrat in every presidential election for decades, suddenly defected and voted Trump, some by 20-point margins. It was a massive swing away from the establishment leftist party to the more nationalist populist, the so-called far-right candidate. And that's exactly what we saw happening here. Keep in mind, in many respects, what we're seeing play out here in Britain is what many are calling the Brexit realignment. So some months before Trump realigned American politics with the white working class defecting from the Democrats and voting Trump, back in 2016, right, we saw that very same realignment in the UK first with the Brexit vote in June of 2016. So districts that had voted Labour for decades, they were the ones who most wanted out of the EU. Brexit, in many respects, was a working class revolt against the globalist bullies in Brussels. And that very same sentiment expressed itself again in the December 2019 landslide election for Boris Johnson and the Tories, where regions that would never even have imagined themselves voting Conservative, did so en masse, giving the Tories the biggest landslide victory in a century. And all because Boris Johnson ran on getting Brexit finally done, finally finalized, as it were. But then after Johnson and the Tories squandered that opportunity, after they betrayed their working class voters by opening up the borders and bringing in more migrants than even Labour did, those same working class voters swung back to the Labour Party. And now, after Kier Starmer's embarrassing tenure, they finally come home to Nigel Farage's Reform UK. Now, you would think that after a catastrophe of that magnitude, after a full-blown political realignment, that a prime minister would sit down with his cabinet, listen to his colleagues, right, dust off the dirt, as it were, take stock, and chart a new course. That's not what Kier Starmer did. On Tuesday morning of this week, Starmer called his cabinet together. He walked in. He banned any discussion of his leadership. He told everyone at the table, if you want to talk to me about leadership, come find me one-on-one, privately, afterwards. He delivered a pre-written statement saying he would not resign. He talked about the Iran situation, the Strait of Hormuz, and then he ran away. He literally ran away. When his own ministers, including the health secretary, West Streeting, tried to approach him after the meeting, he refused to speak to them. He retreated into Downing Street, locked the door, stopped taking calls. His office stopped responding to the media. He sent out surrogates to face the cameras. And what did those surrogates say? They actually claimed that the prime minister has the full confidence of his cabinet because nobody challenged his leadership at the cabinet meeting. They literally said everything was fine. They said Starmer had the full confidence of his colleagues. Gang, he banned them from challenging him at the meeting. Then he ran away before they could speak to him privately. And now his surrogates are going on television saying, hey, well, nobody challenged him. That's not leadership. That's a man who's completely lost the plot. And now it's all coming crashing down. But first, gang, what if I told you there's a little known arbitrage play hiding inside a $30 billion market, and regular people with zero background in finance or tech are quietly generating $5,000, $10,000, even $20,000 a month from it, using nothing but a laptop? I know it sounds almost too good to be true, but here's what's actually going on. There's a significant and very real pricing gap in the used book market. The same book can be worth dramatically different amounts depending on where it's listed. And the people who've learned how to spot and exploit that gap are building serious, sustainable income. And what makes this unlike anything else I've come across, you never actually handle a single physical book. No inventory sitting in your garage, no trips to the post office, no physical logistics whatsoever. The whole thing runs from your browser. You identify the opportunity, you make a few clicks, and the fulfillment side is handled entirely by someone else. And I want to be clear, this isn't a side hustle that just pads your grocery budget. This is a real business model. People are running full time right now, many of them having walked away from jobs they didn't love to do. That's why I'm personally hosting a free training where I'm going to walk you through exactly how this system works, start to finish. No filler, no theory, just the actual mechanics of how to find the opportunities and what to do with them. I've gone deep on this, gang, and I'm genuinely excited to show you what I found. Click the link below or type bkprofit.com/Turley in your browser or scan the QR code on your screen to reserve your free spot right now. You do not want to miss this one. It started Tuesday morning. The first to go was Miata Fambule, Minister of Devolution Faith, and communities. Then by midday, Jess Phillips had resigned. Phillips, the safeguarding minister, cited the government's failure to deliver real change for women and girls. She told Starmer that he was a good man fundamentally, but that being a good man is simply not enough. Then came Alex Davies-Jones, the Minister for Victims and Violence Against Women. By the way, as an aside, I can't believe these are even cabinet positions, but nevertheless, her letter didn't mince words. She said the scale of the electoral defeats had been catastrophic. She said, quote, "The country has spoken and we must listen." She implored Starmer to set out a timetable for his own departure. By late afternoon, Dr. Zubair Ahmed, a health minister and NHS surgeon, had resigned with a lengthy letter about his own achievements before finally getting to the point that Starmer's continuation in office was, quote, "wholly untenable." 4 ministers in a single day. And by Tuesday evening, over 80 Labour MPs, it's members of parliament, nearly a quarter of Starmer's entire parliamentary party had publicly called for his resignation. That number crossed 91 by nightfall. And 91 is 10 more than the threshold required to trigger a formal leadership challenge. The threshold has been crossed. But then came the one that truly broke it open, Wes Streeting. He's not just a junior minister. Wes Streeting is the health secretary of the United Kingdom. He is the most senior cabinet figure, one of the most prominent politicians in the Labour Party, and he spent weeks quietly gathering the names of MPs who would support a leadership challenge. And so yesterday morning, Streeting had a 16-minute meeting with Starmer inside number 10. Nobody knows exactly what was said, but when Streeting walked out of that building, he did not take a single question from the press waiting outside. And then came his resignation letter. He told Starmer directly, quote, "It's now evident that you will not guide the Labour Party into the next general election." He cited policy missteps, the decision to cut the winter fuel allowance for pensioners, and a leadership style that left the public, in his words, quote, "unsure of who we are and what we truly represent." Now, critically, Streeting did not announce his own candidacy in the letter, at least not yet. He urged Starmer to step aside and let a proper race begin, but many see that as a bit of a power move. By not declaring himself a candidate for Labour's leader, he forces Starmer to keep hemorrhaging support while the field opens up around him. Here's the bottom line in all of this. What's happening to Kier Starmer is not just about one man losing his grip on power. It's about what happens when a political party spends years pretending to be something that it's not. Labour won a historic majority in 2024, not because the country loved Kier Starmer. They don't. But because the country was exhausted by Boris Johnson and the Tories. There was no mandate. There was no vision. There was no movement or coalition. There was just a protest vote, a massive one against the other guys. And Nigel Farage figured that out. Reform UK is not just winning council seats. It's replacing the Labour Party as the voice of the British working class. And at the same time, it's replacing the Tories as the voice for conservatives. It is doing in the UK what Donald Trump did in America, what conservatives across the Western world are doing everywhere, speaking plainly to people who've been ignored, talking about the things the establishment media refuses to discuss, and winning because truth eventually always wins. As for Kier Starmer, he can lock himself in Downing Street. He can refuse to take questions. He can send out surrogates to tell the cameras everything is fine. But when 91 of his own MPs have crossed the threshold, when his own health secretary has walked out the door, when 4 ministers resigned in a single day, and the British people in town after town after town across the UK last week voted for change, he may not be leaving today, He may not leave this week, but one way or another, you can be assured, Kier Starmer is indeed leaving.